Hello, widowhood. Our conversations have different twists and turns. Today's conversation is with Lori, someone I met when I was going through breast cancer. She is not a widow or a widower, but she has experienced grief. And I think that you will find some of the things that Lori shares very helpful. So let's get into the conversation.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, widowhood. My guest today is Lori. We have known each other for a long time. And I am glad to have her. Well, I'm not glad that she's here for the grief part, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak with Lori. And I'll let her say hello and introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Prashker-Thomas, and as Tina said, we have known each other a long time. I'm not quite sure how long. Uh, am I allowed to say how we met?
Absolutely. It can't be called real talk if you don't really talk. So yeah.
Perfect. So I actually met Tina doing a I Picture Hope photo shoot. I don't even remember what year, honestly.
I want to say, so I think I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2015-ish.
Okay.
So no, somewhere between 2011 2015. So that is
Okay.
the window. And I think I was on the outside of treatment when we met. So I want to say, yeah, still 2011, 2015,
So
somewhere in
probably
that
like
window.
14, 15, because I mean, I've been doing I Picture Hope now since 2011, 2012. So somewhere in there.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Lori is going to allow us to use that picture when we post her blog for the podcast. So you'll be able to see we were out there, some bare chested women.
Absolutely. Almost every photo shoot.
Yes, that is true. So what gives you hope these days, Lori?
What gives me hope? So one of the things that gives me hope is my grandbaby.
Tell us
She
about the baby.
she's going to be 4 years old in a few weeks. Well, in a few weeks.
Okay.
Hard to believe she's going to be 4. Uh, and just seeing her, watching her see light, like watching life through her eyes
Mm.
and the innocence, and really going into things with innocence really does give me hope. Gives me hope for the future. That's one of the things but that's really one of the big things that gives me hope in this time that we're living in.
So when you're not doing the I hope photography, what keeps you busy?
Oh, I think it's easier if we do what doesn't keep me busy. But I am a paralegal by trade. So I do that, and then I am also owner of the photography studio, Shadowcatcher Photography. I'm a wedding officiant and lead officiant and owner of Ceremonies by Lori, and I am also a brand new author, and I'm also a speaker and advocate on many different levels.
Okay, I didn't keep a list. How many was that? Was that
Oh,
5, 6? Okay, how many was that?
5, 4 plus
Okay.
Bumpy and Wife.
Okay. Oh, we will, and just for her husband, she's putting that up front. We're gonna retract all of that and go up first because that's first. That is
Yes.
when. Okay.
Yeah.
So what of any of these ventures do they include everything that is Lori? And I want to say, and what is it?
Yeah, it actually really does it does involve who is Lori. I mean, when it comes to the photography, so I went to FIT, got my degree in fashion
What is
design.
FIT for
Sorry,
everyone?
Fashion Institute of Technology,
And where is that?
in New York City.
Okay, thank you.
And so yes, I use my artistic abilities. So I went to FIT originally for fashion buying and merchandising, and really hated it. but didn't want to leave. Like loved the fact that I could like dress a window, but didn't like the business aspect of it, which come to now, it's all business for me, which is really kind of funny. But it does everything that I do does encompass a bit of me or a lot of me. Um, I became a wedding officiant because friends couldn't find a rabbi to marry them because they are a same-sex couple. I am a firm believer in love is love. And so I became originally ordained online and married them. And this was before same-sex marriage was legal in all states. So when I came to Pennsylvania, I came back to Pennsylvania, it had just become legal. And I'm actually one of the first wedding officiants to marry a same-sex couple in Pennsylvania. So I am a sucker for love. So I am a romantic at heart, and it does not matter to me what that looks like. I am just a sucker for love. So that is a big part of it. And I also did it because when my husband and I got married, I did not like our ceremony. We were married by a magistrate who was a friend of our family's. We wanted to include my daughter, and he wouldn't do it. He would not include, like, he was not moving from that script. Whatever the script was he used, that is just how he was doing it. And I was never very happy with that ceremony. I mean, I married my husband, I married my best friend. That's all great. But in the back of my head, first of all, it wasn't done by a rabbi. So that was something that was always in the back of my mind too. But he wouldn't change. And I kept saying to my husband for years, there has to be something better. And I could never find anything better, so I made something better.
I like that. So I want to go back to a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
So if I heard you correctly, you went to college with this idea of what you wanted to major in. And then as you were there, realized that really was not what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But you persevered and stayed. If someone was in college now and they realize, I don't like this major, what advice would you give to them?
Change it. Honestly, change if at all possible. And there are times where you're so far along that you need 3 credits or 6 credits, whatever one semester would be in your particular college. Stick with it at that point, just so you have a degree. It doesn't matter what that degree is in. You don't have to use that degree. A lot of companies that I have spoken with over the many, many years, as long as you had a degree, it didn't matter what your degree was in, which has always kind of blown my mind a little bit. But persevere. But if you don't like the what you are studying, see if you can change it. Find something that brings you joy. And yes, it's going to be work. No matter what, that is your job at that point, is to be a college student and study, and that is your job. But it should bring you a little bit of joy, even stress, but joy within it. And it took everything that I had to stay. But I was able to change from fashion buying and merchandising to adding fashion design. So that's where I went to a 2 years. The Fashion Institute at the time was only a 2-year school. So I persevered just so that I could get it done. But I was able to add in other things. So I actually have like a major and a minor, even though it's an associate's. But honestly, just keep plugging forward, but try to find things. Even take a course that you'll get credit for, but it's something that will bring you joy.
I can relate to that. When I was in school, I started off with a particular major. And I like how you said add in it as a minor. I started with business administration, just kind of something generic, until I found my niche, what I felt like I was really interested in and what I could see myself doing. It started out as a finance major, but then I took an accounting class and realized I liked that even more. So I flipped it to a minor, and that is something I did do quite a bit of. So yeah, that is some solid advice. Thank you. Also, you mentioned about that people are looking for a Jewish rabbi to marry them. Are you considered a Jewish rabbi, or how does that correlate to your ordination?
So my ordination, because I had to pick a title, and that was the one that resonated most with me, is rabbi. I do only use that title when I'm signing a marriage license. I don't feel that I have gone through enough training. I mean, I've gone through training. I didn't just do the online thing, but I don't consider myself a rabbi or technically a rebbitzin, but I use it just so that I have to, when I'm signing the licenses, I have to have a title.
Okay, that's fair. So, do you recall your first marriage and what that was like in the couple? I mean, you don't have to obviously use their name, but if you're willing to share, that would be interesting to hear about.
Absolutely. So I became ordained because two of my friends couldn't, like I said, couldn't find a rabbi. And I remembered I became ordained online. It was legal within Salt Lake or Utah with, at the time, Universal Life Church. And I became ordained. And then writing my first ceremony, I will say, was a bit daunting because I didn't want to just do the typical marriage ceremony. It wasn't what they wanted. I mean, they wanted specific things within the Jewish wedding ceremony, like the seven blessings and the stomping of the glass and what's called the circling of the grooms or the brides, whichever the case may be. But so that wasn't so hard for me. But telling their story is what's always been important, telling their love story, which is what I do in every ceremony that I do. I always include the love story. And so writing it was a bit difficult. Performing wasn't a big deal to me. I've been a theater kid since I was 3. So so the aspect of actually doing the ceremony didn't bother me in the least. Uh,
So, public
it was
speaking, not a problem.
no, it's not been a problem in most of my life. Um, like I said, I've been a theater kid and a dance kid since I was 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
So yeah. So I'm very grateful to my mom. My mom was an artist. She grew up, I mean, she grew up in a very Orthodox Jewish Orthodox home. So being artistic is not typically what is done, but her parents may not have been happy about it, but she kind of did what she wanted to do. And so, like, the arts have always been a part of me.
When you said about doing what you wanted to do, I feel like you have a good part of that in you, that you've leveraged that from your mom. I get the sense that you are the do what I want to do kind of person.
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
For the most part, I don't care what anybody else thinks about me, about what I'm doing. I'm not hurting anyone, and I am there to help everyone. And I very much am a go ahead and do it kind of person, as long as it's legal to do. Uh, I don't ever, I try not, I try to live my life that way. It doesn't always work that way, but for the most part, I do try to do what brings me joy, whether it be performance or otherwise. And I am a firm believer in helping others to do the same, or at least to try and get them to that point.
Thank you. You mentioned about writing, so I want to use that as opportunity to leverage into your book. What is the title of your book, and what is it about? I don't have a copy yet. Shameless plug. I'm just
Uh,
putting that out there.
you will get one, I promise. I just got a shipment of them. I've been waiting. So it's actually called From Mistakes to Miracles, a Jewish birth mother story of redemption, hope, and healing. And it started off as just my story of being specifically a Jewish birth mother. It morphed into something much bigger um, than just that. It also morphed into me discussing being a suicide survivor and a trauma survivor, and being bullied most of my life, and things like that. So it kind of comes full circle. So the book really is my life and my story.
So you use the term Jewish birth mother. What does that mean, and where did that term come from?
So as far as I know, I coined the term. I mean, I didn't, but I did. Because so I specifically discuss adoption, but specifically being a birth parent um, in the Jewish community, and that is not discussed ever. I don't exist, or so certain members of a community do not necessarily like to discuss that I exist. So I actually do discuss being a Jewish birth mother specifically because I left I left here uh, because I was pregnant and did not want to bring shame to my family. I did not want to. Basically, I left because I didn't want to bring shame to my family, which is very big in the Jewish community, among other religions and races as well. Not just that, but one of the conversations, Tina, that I've been having here of late is I am all about the babies. And when I see a baby, I am all about the baby. And I have gone up to this family. I don't know them. Like, I know them to say hello to. I don't know them well. I didn't know that they had a baby. And I went, I'm like, oh, the baby is adorable. Look at those cheeks, all of these things. And they somehow got onto the topic that they had just adopted her. And I said, oh, Mazel Tov, that's wonderful. Congratulations. I have my issues with adoption, but great, you know. But then I specifically went and asked him, I said, so do you keep in contact with the birth mother? And their words to me were and are, we wish that she didn't exist. And I said, oh, why is that? And they couldn't really give me an answer that they were willing to go into a conversation with me. They don't know me. They don't know my story. And I walked away at that point. But I've heard it, especially in the last since I've released the book. I've heard it probably 3 or 4 more times after that from different families, and not just Hasidic, but just Jewish in general. So I do discuss being a Jewish birth mother specifically from my point of view because I grew up in an Orthodox household. I grew up in a somewhat religious household. My mother grew up was Orthodox. My father grew up Reformed, so they kind of met in the middle when they were trying to find a temple, and we belong to a conservative movement. But I went to an Orthodox Jewish elementary school, so that I did grow up knowing all the laws and spirituality and religious aspect of it. But I also was the kid that questioned everything. So it boiled down to, for me, when I was not making the best decisions in my life, getting pregnant and leaving because it boiled down to I didn't want to bring shame to my family.
Okay. Thank you for explaining it because I can see some people when you say Jewish birth mom, I didn't know if that was an intentional birth. And based on you
No,
explaining it, that was a birth at a young age. And then,
not young. I
oh,
wasn't
okay.
young.
How about how?
No, I was 25, 23, 24 years old. I was not, I mean, I was
Wow.
young, but it wasn't a teenage pregnancy. This
Okay.
was,
Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah, no, it's, I was not making good decisions. I had just gotten out of a very long, for me, 4-year relationship and came back home because I didn't have anywhere else to go and did not make good decisions and was drinking and doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, but was.
And who has not? We all have
Exactly.
a list of,
Exactly.
we don't appreciate life now. It was for the things that we were doing. Like, oh, I'm just
Exactly.
glad they didn't have cell phones back in the day when we were doing that. That's all I'm saying. That
Oh,
you
Tina,
know
you
what
are
I
so
told you.
right.
Somebody wrote a letter, but there is not a video, a camera. Yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
Oh yes, no, you are 100% right on that. That's
Because life is living, and
right.
those choices we made. How do you know the good choices are good unless we're able to compare them
Right.
to younger me? And heck, older me makes some choices and she's like, really? That's what you did today? I don't even know if that was good, but we're just going to move along because I'm an ask forgiveness person. I'm not an ask for permission. And
Right.
sometimes you kind of like 50% correct and you just go from there.
Yep.
So 26-year-old Lori, how did you go from I'm going to leave home to I'm going to let this baby go?
That's a process. So it took me quite a few months to even grapple with the idea that I was pregnant. I
Okay.
was in denial for quite a while. Um, and then when I finally realized that I can't be in denial any longer, I wanted to go and have an abortion. Went to the clinic. I had a friend of mine who took me, did not agree with abortion, but was there to support me, which I'm very grateful for that. I ended up at the abortion clinic. I was filling out the paperwork, and it just wasn't sitting right with me. Just wasn't sitting right with me. And I am a firm believer in, women have the right to choose. Like that is something that I always say when I'm telling this story. It just wasn't right for me. That is not to say that it wouldn't be right for me in another situation. Or, if I was in the same situation 10 years later, I don't know. I mean, we don't know. None of us know what we could have done.
Absolutely. We can only know where we were at that moment in time. That same
Exactly.
decision may play out differently, but that's where you were. I
That's where
agree.
I was. So I literally handed back the all of the paperwork to the nurse and said, not for me. Thank you. I'm out. But at the same time I did that, I really became lost. I really didn't know what to do because, again, shame played a huge part in this aspect and this time of my life. And I packed up my things and moved to Florida just so that my parents didn't know.
And that was from you lived in New York at that
So I
time?
went from New York back to Pennsylvania,
I see.
and then I had a job. I my actually my boss in New York had moved to Florida and had asked me to come with him 6 months earlier, and I said no, I like New York. I'm going to be here. This is where I want to be. Yada yada yada. And then, you know, it everything just went blew up in my face. Moved home, and then moved from Pennsylvania to Florida. And I specifically chose Florida because I was under the assumption that it was an open adoption state, and at the time it was not. But no, but the attorney didn't tell me this, which is a
Oh,
whole other aspect of things. I have many issues with adoption. I have many issues with private adoption because it's a business. I have many issues in regards to, and I do talk about that. But I ended up moving to Florida not even a week after I moved there. I literally opened the yellow pages because there was no Google at the time.
once again, there was no phone. We don't have proof. I'm fine with that. The,
Exactly.
the,
There
the,
was
the
no
book we
Google.
deliver.
There was no Google at the time. I opened the yellow pages and I found the biggest ad, and I just went with her. Now, had I done my actual due diligence, it would have been a whole other story. But I had made that decision at that point. Well, actually, on my way down to Florida, I had kind of made peace with the decision that I was going to place for adoption because I could take care of myself financially, but I knew at that time I was not able to take care of myself emotionally. There was just no way. I was not making good decisions, and I didn't want to put another life in danger, honestly.
That's fair. So, and I don't want to give away your book, and that is enough to have a concept as far as the journey. But you talked about some other things that, as you were writing the book, that started percolating within yourself that needed to deal with. What were those items, and how has Lori grown from that experience of being come to terms with those?
So I delve into me being bullied and my suicide attempt in elementary school. In 8th grade was my first attempt. So I definitely talk about, being bullied, not really knowing why I was bullied, except, I mean, now I was different. I mean, again, I was a theater kid. I was not the typical Jewish kid, who, whatever that looked like at the time. That was not me. And so I delve into that. I delve into my suicide attempt in high school. Also being wasn't so much I was being bullied, but I was being bullied. But I also was told in my 7th and 8th grade years that I was stupid. I wasn't diagnosed with a learning disability until my freshman year of college. School had always been difficult for me. Reading for me was always very difficult. Comprehension was ridiculously hard for me. Numbers were not. Numbers have always been fairly easy for me. But reading comprehension, doing English lit, doing any of that was so difficult. And it still is. I've kind of learned some, ways around it now. But now that I know what to do and, have been taught. But so I delve into that a lot in the book. I also talk about like my mother's passing, my father's passing, being caregivers, moving back from Florida to Pennsylvania specifically so that I could be with my parents. And I'm so grateful that I moved back because I mean I was here when my mom passed. I was here when my dad passed, and that to me meant the world to be able to be here for them.
That is,
So,
you said a lot right there. So I'm going to try to in a couple of different things. The idea of feeling so hopeless that you wanted to take your own life. Looking back at it now, what would you have told young Lori to hold out for it, that life has to wait for her?
the one thing that I would say mostly is that it does get better. It doesn't go away, but it does get better. I think is really one of the biggest things that one of the biggest things that I've learned from that experience is that it does get better. I wouldn't say easier, just it becomes different. And maybe I've learned how to, I hope that she would be able to learn some of the lessons that I learned later in life, earlier in life, to be able to deal with the bullies and realize that their opinions don't matter.
And that is fair. Young Lori and Lori now, those are not singular events. Those are things that you probably utilize in a work meeting. It's something you utilize in so many different aspects. It's not just young Lori in high school dealing with the bullies then. It is those people that appear to intimidate in different forms. Or what would you say to that?
Yeah, Tina, that is a great point. That is so well stated that yes. And I do use it. And even when talking doing local speaking engagements at for my book, the one thing that I was concerned about was that some of these bullies were going to show up and how was I going to deal with that? Now they haven't. um I've gotten an apology from one person from that time, which is fine, and I accept it. I told them a long time ago, I forgave them a long time ago, I just don't always forget. But yeah, that is a huge point of intimidation. I don't let 90% of it. I don't let intimidation even like come into my brain.
I think that is, and that's good because those things that happen to us when we are young, that we carry some portion of that as we
Yes.
grow older.
Hmm.
And if there are not things that we don't identify and call out, they can have a root within us and alter who we become versus who we could have become.
Yes.
And I think it's good that we live in a time where trying to see and hear people's voices and to be seen. So if someone's being bullied, reach out and let someone know you're being bullied. If you're feeling like rejected or things are going on, find someone to talk to, call a suicide prevention hotline, reach out to a school counselor or someone that will help you to be able to deal with that. Because the sooner you're able to deal with that internally and get that out, it's a better chance of you having just things that you can deal with in the tools to be able to manage that, I think is what I want to say, to be able to help you that when this starts happening, whether it's on social media, delete them. They don't have to be your friend. They don't have to have access to your social media, because I'm finding what people will say across social media is not what they will say right in your face. And if someone's saying something, you can walk away. You don't have to.
Exactly.
I think that fear factor, you just like can't believe it's happening. You're standing there and we're taking that. And you once you remove that negativity, you'll find that there are people there that are positive, a light that can experience with you. You talked about being there with your parents, the idea of being there when they pass, and that was a wonderful thing. Most people think of someone passing, and that's not the case. Why were you able to see it that way?
So my mom passed away in 2009. 2009. My mom was in pain. She wasn't necessarily, she was ill. She had very bad RA. There were rheumatoid arthritis. There were other issues as well. But she had been in pain most of my life. Honestly, I mean, I came along, she was 41 or 42 when she had me. And at that time, that was considered old. Okay. I mean, I truly I was the oops, a happy oops, but I was the oops. But my mom was in pain for most of my life. So for her not to be in pain anymore, for me, brought me the solace that I knew that she was no longer in pain. Do I miss her? Terribly. Was it hard watching the last? So my mother passed away rather quickly, which for her was a good thing. I mean, within 2 weeks' time, she went from being okay to passing away. So in that respect, it was good for her, because she always said that she always wanted to go before my father. She didn't want to live without my father. I mean, they were married for just 3 weeks shy of their 55th wedding anniversary when she passed away. And they met on a blind date. I love that story. Yes, they met on a blind date.
Okay, we want that tea right there. What do you know
Okay.
about that?
Okay, so actually, the story that I have been told, that I've been told by many different people, so I know there has to be something right going on in there. My father was released from his army. He had gotten out of the army in, I don't remember the year honestly, but he was in World War II. I'm sorry, the Korean conflict. He had gotten out and he was going to a party that night. My aunt, his sister, set up my father and my mother, and they met, and they hit it off, from what I understand, like very, very quickly. And my father actually, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, maybe a month later, 6 weeks later, he was going on a cross country trip with his buddies. They were together, and then he went away. He went on this trip, but I guess along the way also, my mother wrote letters. Like, they knew where they were going to stop, so that you could at that time send letters to the post office.
So she's met this young man a month, and now she's writing him as his journey across the world.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And he's writing back. And my
Okay.
father is not a writer, but he was writing back. And so there's a little controversy coming. Funny, but so my father actually asked my mother to marry him through a letter. We said he did that because if she said no, he at least didn't have to see her.
I was like, this is the original dating app, is what I hear. It's like before a text, so you could. Your dad was like doing that. He's original convention.
So
Okay.
my dad actually was. My dad was way beyond his years. I mean, he was a 70, 80-year-old man who would sit at a computer and literally, like, he was a programmer. He would write, he made crossword puzzles on the computer for different organizations. Like, he really did, he was a way ahead of his time. So my mother said yes. He came back to the East Coast. I don't know how long it was from when he came back to when they get married. It wasn't long. I mean, it might have been 6 months. And they were married, and they were married just shy of 55 years.
6 months, and most of that time he's away.
From the time he came back, I think it was 6 months from them, from the time he came back from his trip. Maybe 6 months was when they got married.
Wow. Now, so how long did you and your husband date before you got married?
A long time.
Could you imagine 6 months? Like,
so
I think a rash would come upon me.
Yeah, no, I agree. So my first husband, I did not know him any amount of time. So yeah.
Was that an arranged marriage when you say that?
No.
Okay.
No, that was not long after I moved to Florida. And I realized now I just didn't want to be by myself.
Okay.
So I got married very quickly to somebody I didn't know and should not have married.
Okay. But who doesn't? I've heard so many people young, either they're leaving their parents' house, they're thinking it's going to be better being married, and then you realize marriage is work. It's like, it's not this Disney princess thing going on. But what did Lori, how did you grow from that? How are you better from that experience?
Well, so I always say the best thing that came out of my marriage was my second daughter, who I did parent. So I'm very grateful for her. My ex-husband and I, we should not have been together. We shouldn't have married. We should not. What did I learn from that? Listen to your gut. That's there were red flags from date number one. But I was so adamant about not being alone that I didn't care at that time. Again, not making the best decisions, in my life. But then, so when I divorced him and moved back to PA with my daughter, about a year or so, year and a half later is when I met my current husband. But it took us a long time before we got married. I was not getting married again. My first marriage was also quite abusive, so I was not getting married again. I was very happy living together. We all knew that we were going to be together, but I didn't want to get married. So, but we were together 8 years before we got married.
So what changed? What changed from that being okay to wanting that?
Yeah, so I don't really know. The story goes that my husband and I had shot a wedding this particular weekend. And my husband worked at the Red Cross at the time, and I also, and I would meet him for coffee in his office at like 6 a.m. most days, because there was nobody there. He had been there already, did his morning stuff that he needed to do. And I looked at him and I said, well, I guess that couple has something that I will never have. And he looks at me and he goes, what, a diamond ring? I said, no. I said, that's my birthstone. I've had diamonds all my life. Making a joke out of that aspect of it. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And I said, a marriage license. And he looks at me and he goes, well, let's get married. And I said, okay. And literally 2 days later, we went and got our marriage license. And a week later, we got married. So you can plan a wedding in a week.
But I want to ask you, is there any thought for renewing your vows and having this wedding that was the spirit? You did do it, or you're looking?
We did. No,
okay,
we did it.
Good. Okay, what did that look like? Please share.
So on our 10th wedding anniversary and our 18th year together, and 18 is a very prominent number within the Jewish aspect of things. It means life. It's two Hebrew letters, and it's Chai, and Chai means life, and it's the number 18. So on our 18th anniversary together and our 10th wedding anniversary, we actually did renew our vows under the chuppah with our rabbi. My parents weren't there; they had already passed, but I know they were there, and we had a party at Janae's, and like I did do the whole. It was still small because I'm not like a huge. I don't need a lot of people. But the core group of people, I think we had maybe 12 or 14 people. But it was perfect for me.
You now have the wedding you were happy with, but if the wedding wasn't bad before, you would have never done the photography or the ordination and doing those
Yes,
things. So that it was a catalyst for that.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was how my husband and I got married. I mean, we neither one of us, he had been with his daughter's mother for 18 years. And so I actually never thought that he would get married. And I had always said I would never get married again, but never say never.
That is true. I think so. The trauma of the abusive relationship, the different things that you learned, how does that help you show up to other people?
So I always say, going back to that, I always say that when I divorced my ex-husband, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know in a person, in my soulmate, for lack of a better word, what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want, which my mom always used to say to me, that's half the battle. She was 100% right. So,
But there's a lot of truth in that because when you're young, you really don't know what you want. You're still
mhm,
trying to figure you out.
yes,
So to figure out how to select a life partner, I think one of the things that you said that was critical was time, taking time to get to know this person,
yes,
taking time to
yes,
see them with other people that are in their sphere, see them with their family, and take the
yep,
time to do that.
yep,
Has Lori learned how to be by herself now?
yes. Lori enjoys her time by herself. Um, like this evening, my husband is not here, and when you and I are finished, I can do what Lori needs to do or wants to do. But
Mm,
yes, I do enjoy time. I mean, I love my husband, and I always say there's a difference between loving someone and being in love with somebody, and I am in love with my husband. I still get the little, my heart races when he walks in the room and when he kisses me and all of that. And again, I am a romantic at heart. That's just the way I am. It's, I think, the way my brain is wired. Um, but yes, I can be alone. I enjoy my time alone. I enjoy being by myself,
wow.
which is something that I've never. I COVID really taught me how to do that.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
that is something else actually that I do talk about that I kind of glanced over a little. So back in 2020, I was very, very ill and was intubated, did not have COVID. It was something completely different. But I lost 30 days of my life. And apparently, there were a few nights that I should not have made it through, but I am here. So I have learned to to like a lot more things than what I normally probably would not have, but now enjoy.
Okay. And I know widowhood real talk with Tina, there's a lot of grief, but this conversation allows us to look at grief from obviously the perspective of losing your parents, but life in general. Were
Life
there,
in general, and also a child. I mean,
yes.
for is she happy, healthy, and just got married last weekend? Absolutely. um but I have
Hold on. When you say child, the child that's with you, the child
the my daughter who I placed for adoption.
you still have contact and you're,
I do now. I
oh
did not.
wow. Okay.
I did not for 18 years. I did not.
Mm.
Again, through the advent of Facebook, she Facebook stalked me. Because originally, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, this was supposed to be an open adoption. It ended up not being an open adoption on for many different reasons.
Can you explain the difference between open and closed adoption to clarify for everyone?
Yes. So a closed adoption means that once the adoption is is completed, your records are sealed, and technically you cannot get any other information from the government side of things. Now, with the advent of DNA and 23andMe and all of these other things, that kind of does not apply anymore. An open adoption is just that. It is open. Technically, the adoptive parents will keep the birth parents maybe not involved, but updated. At least that is what you hope for. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted to know that my baby girl was safe and healthy. And I did not have that because through it, all of this, the lawyer lied to both of us. So
Okay.
there was an unethical, there was an unethical attorney issue there that we have since dealt with.
I can see.
So that's really the big differences between open and closed.
Now, was the book written before you reconnected with your daughter, or
Nope.
was written afterwards?
No, it was written, well, so it started to be written about 4 years ago, about 4 years ago. And it was supposed to be released then. COVID happened. So that kind of pushed things off. And I don't think that was the right time because it has morphed into something completely different.
Wow.
Than the original book.
For sure. I mean, this goes back to the love story. I mean, there's love story in that for her to reach out and that you
She reached
welcome
out to
her.
me, yeah.
Yeah. And so you guys, do you see each other on a regular or reconnect?
No, we
Okay.
don't see each other very often. But we do text every day. Even if it's just a good morning, have a good day. And she does include me in like a lot of her big moments now. Like I couldn't watch her be married. I mean, I couldn't be there to watch her be married, but I was able to watch her on Zoom to be married.
Right.
I am in contact with her adopted parents. There are issues there as well, but she reached out to me when she turned 18, and we've been in contact ever since.
Wow, that's nice. And I cannot imagine what that looked like for her to be able to have a positive response from you, answer a lot of questions that she has.
Yeah,
And
and there were answers that I couldn't necessarily give her because, like, the one question that she had was who she wanted to know who her biological father was, and I didn't know.
okay.
I mean, honestly, I didn't know who it was. Again, not the best decisions in my life.
And we
But
all have a list of those.
exactly. But through I don't remember if it was Ancestry or 23andMe, we found out who her
Okay.
biological father is.
Nice.
So she has that answer at least. And that to me, I didn't care. Like I had made peace with my decisions a long time ago. But I wanted the answers for her because they were important to her.
Yes. Yes.
And she deserved to know that.
Absolutely. What are things you want to do this year?
Oh.
See, I didn't go 3 year or 5 year, just this year. Just this year.
Okay, well, thank you, because I can't think that far ahead, honestly. I used to hate that when you would have that in an interview and they'd say, "Where do
Oh,
you
what are
see
your
yourself
three,
in
5 year
5 years?"
goals? Oh, like to be employed, maybe have your job and not get
Like,
fired. Oh yeah.
that question to me, I would literally panic when I would hear that question,
Okay.
or I had some canned answer somewhere in there.
Exactly.
What do I want to do this year? I want to tell my story. I mean, honestly, that is a huge part of what my vision board is this year. That I want to be able to go not only within the Jewish community, but like within communities itself, and tell my story and let other women know that they don't have to go through this alone. That's a huge part on the business side of things. That's something that I do look forward to. On a personal level, I just want to spend time with more time with my family. Honestly, I don't get to see, like, we're not all in the same place, so it's I really want to travel to see my family. That's
Okay.
really what I want to do.
That is fair. I think as we grow older, the preciousness of our family and the value of that and what is important for me is it tends to shift. I am fortunate to have one of my sisters and my mom live literally next door.
That's great.
And it is. And my siblings know if I had my wish, I would have everybody on the same block. If there was some way that I could do that, I would. When you just, I know we've been talking for a bit and almost about to wrap up, but I want to ask a few more questions.
Sure.
When you hear the word grief, what does that mean for you?
The word grief to me brings sadness. Because grief typically means that you've lost someone or something. And that is always typically, that is hard. That is always hard to deal with. For me, grief losing people in my life, whether it be because of physicality or other reasons, is hard. And like I said to you before, losing my parents was extremely difficult for me. But being able to be here with them, we took care of my husband and I took care of my dad until 2 weeks before he passed away. He lived in this house. We moved in to take care of him, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But when we couldn't take care of him and we moved him into hospice, that was grief for me. That was very hard for me to deal with because I knew ultimately what was going to happen, but I was already losing him. And for as grateful as I was and am that I was here with him most of that time, and my mom as well, grief for me is just that loss. And I don't like loss. I mean, I don't know anybody that does, but I've learned over the years how to deal with it a little bit better than I may have, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. But everybody deals with grief differently. And so I always tell people that you may see a smile on someone's face, and you think everything is fine, but it may not be. And they are dealing with grief and the loss of someone or something.
You talked about you deal with grief. So we use the word deal, but are there some methods, tools, or how you really dealt with it? If you could share one or two items.
So I think one of the things that I do is I keep a memory, a good memory, always in my mind and in my heart when I'm meditating, because I have anxiety, and for me, my anxiety really became huge when my dad passed away, like even more so than it was before that, because he was my go-to person. Like if I had a problem, like my dad is who I would go to. So for dealing with certain things, I try to just keep a positive memory of that person or someone who is associated with me who brings me joy. And my grandmother, it would be the same thing with my grandmother as well. So I think that's one of the ways that I deal with it. I think one of the other things for me, and this may sound really ridiculous to some, but I dance.
No, there's a lot of release in that energy and the music, swimming. Oh,
Uh-huh. And
I'm sorry. What's your answer? I'm gonna be quiet.
No, you are correct. I dance, and if I'm working, like if I'm editing photos, I will put something on like that is reminiscent of my parents. Because I listen to everything from the 1920s on up to now. So my music choices are vast. But I will put on a Harry Belafonte station and just listen, and sing along and dance and just remember those stories of my mom, because that was one of my mother's favorite artists. So there's that. But if I'm starting to feel very sad and just very, I hate to say put upon, and I am grieving in that moment, I will put on music and I will dance. I will dance around this house like nobody's watching and don't care.
I think that's beautiful because what do we mostly have all the time? We have a phone. And we can
Yeah,
make a playlist. We can make those songs that allow us to
exactly.
embrace our loved ones, help us to be in that moment because as you said, put upon as that grief starts being heavier, then sometimes it's not needing a way to manage that. I mean, dance and releasing the stress off your body
Yeah.
and being into the music. I think that's a beautiful way to be able to deal with the grief, manage that, and to just embrace it because life, we lose people along the way. And to have cared for your parents, that loss and seeing them in the house and just everything, you wouldn't take back a moment because it was an opportunity to serve them. But we do have to manage our grief in their absence.
Yes, and especially for me, certain times of the year are very hard for me. My family seem, for as much as they hated the winter, they all seem to have passed away between like January and March. So and for us in the Jewish religion, not only do I have the secular anniversaries, but I have the Hebrew anniversaries as well. So between January and March is very hard for me, and certain holidays, and really starting from the Hanukkah and Christmas on,
Mm.
I just get that heavy, heavy feeling. So I am constantly, I may not be dancing, but I will have music going most of the day, even at work. I will have something playing in the background, um, just to kind of keep myself centered and grounded.
I think that's really beautiful that you keyed into yourself. You have the timeline. And at this point, probably going, okay, like you can start getting busy and then you realize, whoa, whoa, why do I feel like that? And you start
Uh-huh.
putting the dots together. It's like, and then you look at the calendar and it's like, I see what's going on. Let me circle
Yep.
back to do those things to help me manage the grief.
Yeah.
And that is really important because if not, you can find yourself someplace mentally and then you start doing a checklist and circle back and see what I need to do for that self care to be able to deal with that. I think that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Any closing comments? I know we've talked about a lot. Or is there anything you want to talk about we didn't speak about?
No, I'm just grateful that you and I reconnected because it's been a while.
It
So I'm
has
very
been.
grateful for that. So
Thank you. So I will ask you this, and I think I kind of asked this in a form. In all you've experienced, where, if someone is hopeless, do you think they can reach within themselves or find or how to get hope?
that's hard. I mean, there are times where you have to just dig deep, and sometimes deep means all the way down to your toes because you just can't find that hope. I think one of the things that people need to do mostly is just find a positive memory, find a happy memory. It could be, something from your childhood, it could be something from last week, a funny story. I think if you can find one little piece of happiness somewhere, that tends to change your mindset. And I think people need to, including myself, people need to just dig deep to find a positive memory somewhere, something, because not as hard as our lives may be, and others are much harder than mine, and some are not, and yours as well. Um, I would hope that they could find just 1 second of happiness somewhere and build upon that.
That is some good advice because sometimes if we can find that one piece and then one piece on top of another piece on top of another piece, and then we keep looking and it shows that there is something worth living for. There is
Yes.
something there for me. And to be able to see, I think that is excellent advice. Lori, thank you for sharing this hour with us with the widowhood. Thank you for those golden nuggets that you were able to share from your life experience.
Thank you for having me, Tina. This was great, and I look forward to hearing more from Widowhood and from you and hearing your story because I listen all the time.
Oh, thank
I
you.
learn, and we all learn, and we all take little bits from somewhere. So just know that you are making a difference.
Thank you. Oh, we're putting in the below, but how would one obtain purchase in the book? Where is it sold at?
So it's on Amazon, but the easiest way to do it is just go to LoriPrashkerThomas.com.
Okay.
It's my name without the hyphen.com.
Okay, and we'll have that information. So
Yeah.
that being able to connect with you to buy the book there. And
Yeah.
if someone wanted to connect with you as far as being ordained, is that the same?
If you can get me from there, it's also ceremoniesbylori.com. And if anybody wants photos, it's shadowcatcherphotography.com. But if
Okay.
you, any of those will get to me. So
Okay.
anyway, even if you need to Google me, you can definitely Google me and just reach out anywhere, social media. It's me that you're going to get.
Okay.
So yeah, if anybody wants, or even have a discussion, that somebody they know someone who has gone through something and they don't know, within the adoption area as well. Like by all means, reach out. I am here to help. That is I think one of the reasons why this book has finally come out, for me to be able to tell my story and to help others to deal with theirs as well.
That is fair. And so is that also part of your public speaking, being able to share that story and to be
Yep.
able to do that? So
Yes.
in the bottom of the podcast, all that information will be listed there. And if for some reason you don't get that, just message me at Widowhood on the website, and I'll be sure to share that with everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this conversation, Lori.
Thank you, Tina. Again, I'm so honored.
We just wrapped up her conversation with Lori, and I am so grateful for her willingness to be able to share her book that she's written about being a Jewish birth mother, her trials and tribulations in the marriage, being young and in Florida, just so many different things that she has grieved in her life, even the loss of her parents, and her coping skills, being able to share that, the music, dancing, the ability to take time. I hope that as we have had this different conversation about grief, that you were able to find something that is inspiring. You're able to take a nugget away that will help you in your journey. And I am sorry for the person that you have lost that's brought you to this conversation. But thank you for being part of the widowhood in this discussion. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.